It's open season in the NBA with the trade deadline quickly approaching. February 5th is just around the corner for that trade deadline. One of the names that keeps popping up on the rumor mill is Anthony Davis, as you're looking at him in a season in Dallas that has not gone nearly as well as many thought that it would. AD dealing with injuries at various times this season. That clearly has affected his play because when you look at his numbers, he's played in only 11 games. Those 20 points per game that he's averaging are the lowest of his career outside of his rookie year. Shooting over 50% from the field, though, and averaging a double-double, but still not the AD beast type numbers like we've seen in the past. Sam Quinn now rocking in with us as we look further into potential destinations for Anthony Davis. And Sam, let's go through some of the landing spots that we think we might be able to see across the association. And I'll ask you how you feel and how he might fit and why that trade might make sense. Let's start off in the East and look at the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, I think there's an easy match here with Trae Young where you could swap two players that could make more sense on the other team. Dallas obviously needing guard help. Kyrie Irving's been out all year. They could also just frankly use somebody a little bit younger. As for the Hawks, they've really leaned into this, defense, athleticism, identity since Trae Young's been out earlier in the season. I would worry a little bit about the shooting. I think if you're the Hawks, if you do something like this, you maybe try to trade Kristaps Porzingis and his expiring contract, get another guard in there, get a little bit more shooting in there. But if you do that, now you're looking at a really imposing sort of defense-first team, somebody that could really challenge New York and Detroit atop the Eastern Conference. If you're doing it with Trae Young as the centerpiece, I think it's an interesting idea. You talk about throwing in more picks. At that point, I probably start to get a little iffier.
Yeah, Anthony Davis in Atlanta, that would be an interesting sight to see. Another team we're looking at is in the East, but it's the best team in the East, the Pistons. Why them?
Yeah, I think it's kind of ironic, right? They're sort of Nico Harrison's vision of the Mavericks, just younger and in the East. Cade Cunningham is kind of Kyrie Irving in this scenario. They're a huge team with Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart in that front court. You slide Anthony Davis in there, and it's like, boom, this is what the Mavericks were trying to be, before the injuries kind of derailed that team. The fit is a little questionable to me just because they need shooting so badly. They're not a heavy three-point volume team. They're already winning in the paint very, very comfortably. I think they're going to look to guys. Lauri Markkanen has been linked to them forever. Trey Murphy's a name that comes up for them. Michael Porter Jr. if they wanted to go a little bit cheaper. But if you're trying to play bully ball, they do have all the tools for that. So if they could do that, maybe find a way to add a little bit more shooting in there, that really would maybe take them over the top in the Eastern Conference, especially against the Knicks team that's also pretty big.
Yeah, an East that feels still wide open despite Detroit having the best record and being one of the biggest surprises we've seen around the association. Another big surprise you could say is the Raptors. They're third in the East right now, record of 16-11. Why would the Raptors be a potential landing spot for AD?
Yeah, they just have a talent deficiency, right? You look at the way that they're winning games. It's not the starters. It's that they have a great bench. They're very, very deep. They're not a top-heavy team. They don't really have star power. Scotty Barnes might make the All-Star team this year, but he's not somebody that you'd expect to be consistently making All-NBA teams as Anthony Davis has in the past. The issue here, again, it's a lot like Detroit. This is not a team that's heavy on shooting. So say you were to slide Anthony Davis in, you maybe trade RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, maybe Emmanuel Quickley, some combination of those players. Scotty Barnes, not a great shooter, not too much shooting on this bench. You'd have to do a little bit more work. But I think we can be honest with ourselves and say, if the Raptors have real playoff ambitions, Scotty Barnes is not going to be the best player on a team that makes the finals, or at least the version of Scotty Barnes we've seen thus far. Maybe Anthony Davis could be. So why not take the talent swing and see if you can figure out the rest of the roster after the fact?
Raptors are also 4-6 over their last 10, so they're in the midst of a little bit of a skid right now. Speaking of a skid, that is the definition of the Bulls, because if things ended right now, they would not even be in the play-in. So why would Chicago go after AD?
Hometown sentiment, I think that's probably the prevailing idea right now. There'd been some reporting that, India or Chicago had looked at Josh Giddey as their version of Tyrese Halliburton, trying to build something similar to what the Pacers have built. Well, now they're looking for their Pascal Siakam. Anthony Davis isn't really Pascal Siakam. He's much more of a center. He's not as good a shooter as Siakam's been for Indiana. But if you were to add him, at least you could give yourself a defensive anchor and somebody who could give you a steady 20, 25 points a game, which none of their players really have. Kobe White has not been great since coming back. Josh Giddey isn't that kind of player. He's not a half-court shot creator. He's somebody who wants to play in transition. Do I think the Bulls should do this at this stage? No. It feels like the feel-good window is closed. But when it's a hometown player who maybe wants to play for you and does fill a position of need, sure, it's worth the conversation.
Yeah. The conversation when we go out west, though, I'm intrigued by the Warriors and their fit. Is this okay, you get rid of Jonathan Kuminga because you no longer want to have him in that marriage that just seems to not work for one reason or another? Why else would AD be a fit over there?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of ironic, right? You go back to when the Warriors were doing their two-timeline thing. They draft James Wiseman effectively because they want an Anthony Davis. They want vertical spacing. They want somebody they can throw lobs to. Obviously, Anthony Davis can fit in a switch-heavy defense. The issue they're going to have if they're going to pursue him is matching salary. The way their books are set up, they're very top-heavy. Steph Curry making a supermax deal, Jimmy Butler making that same amount. It's very, very hard for them to match money. You'd have to include Draymond Green and Jonathan Kuminga, or you'd have to do something with Jimmy Butler as the centerpiece. That is not a very deep team. If you're giving up one of your core players, you'd better hope that Anthony Davis is still the guy he was with the Lakers, because if he's not, you just don't have it. I do think the fit makes sense. They are one of the teams that I do think should seriously pursue him. They're just going to have to be very, very careful about the structure of that deal.
Also wouldn't really help their average age of that roster and bringing in a 32-year-old AD. But, hey, that's a conversation for another day. We head back to the East now with the team that just won that NBA Cup, the Knicks. So the Knicks, you say, might try to hit AD. They could land him and get even better?
I think the season has started too well for them to feasibly get in the mix for now. Stuff can always change. But what is the question we've been asking about the Knicks basically since the beginning of last year? Can you defend well enough with Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns on the court at the same time to win a championship? We don't have a definitive answer to that, but what we can say is Anthony Davis is a much better defender than Karl Anthony Towns is. If you could make a swap like that, that solves your defense problems. Now, it brings up offensive problems because Anthony Davis can't shoot like Karl Anthony Towns. So is Josh Hart suddenly a worse fit because he doesn't have as much shooting around him? Do those bench guys make as much sense? Could you play Anthony Davis and Mitchell Robinson together? I mean, defensively, yes. On the glass, yes. The spacing gets a little bit questionable. So it's sort of trading one weakness for another. If the Knicks were to pursue it, it would be because they frankly view one weakness as a little bit more palatable than the other. But they've started off the season so well. They won the NBA Cup. Everything seems to be working out. I don't think they're going to pursue it now, but all it takes is a bad week, a bad month, and maybe you start to reconsider.
Yeah, things can change very, very fast. 6 teams we just ran through of potential trading landing spots for Anthony Davis. I think that covers it all. But then I remember one team that makes a lot of sense. The Bucks. How can you talk about a trade deadline without maybe a swap for Giannis and AD? How do you like that one?
Yeah, I think when you're trading a star, the sort of team you want to trade with is the desperate one. So if you're Dallas, you're looking at Milwaukee right now and saying they are so afraid of losing Giannis that they might be willing to do something that's frankly reckless. They don't have that many draft picks left, but you look at the Bucks picks in 2031 and 2032, when they don't control any of their draft picks beforehand, and you say, wow, those are some potentially very, very interesting picks. Could we get Miles Turner, whose shooting would make a lot of sense next to Cooper Flagg? That's a chance for you to fleece a team that's negotiating from a position of weakness. Most of these teams pursuing Anthony Davis, they have the leverage of saying, you're trying to rebuild, Dallas. You've got the older injury-prone player. Why are we giving you a good package? With the Bucks, they are so desperate that you might be able to milk them for everything that they're worth. Would I do that if I were the Bucks? No. I think this era is over. I think they're just, stalling this inevitable trade of Giannis. But the Bucks aren't thinking that way. If there's a desperate suitor on the market, you always try to work with them. I think if the Mavericks can get the Bucks on the line, maybe they could get more for Anthony Davis than any of these other teams might offer.
Sam, I know we just went through all these teams, but are we living in a world where we're saying for sure you think that AD is going to be traded before the deadline?
I don't know about for sure, just because the Mavericks have been playing well lately. They are at least now getting to a point where they can credibly tell suitors, hey, maybe we will keep him. Maybe Kyrie Irving will come back. We'll try to make a run through the play-in. I just think cooler minds, cooler heads should prevail in Dallas and understand that Cooper Flagg's future is the priority. You have an 18-year-old now who's, frankly, one of the best teenagers the NBA has ever seen. You got to be thinking, how can we position him to win in 2029, in 2030? Winning in 2026 when the Thunder are this good, it's unrealistic. My assumption is that with Mark Cuban taking on a bigger voice in that room, with Nico Harrison gone, the cooler heads are going to prevail there, and they're going to say, look, it's nice that we maybe could be a sneaky play-in team, but that's not the goal. The goal is to win a championship, and the best way to do that is to get younger, get cheaper, rebuild around Cooper Flagg, and make our run a few years from now.
And that's why we went through all those scenes for all the folks to be able to remember and look back at. Sam Quinn, thank you so much. Appreciate it as we look forward to the NBA tonight, where there's not a whole lot on the schedule, just two of them. Cavs and the Bulls, Grizz and Timberwolves. 8 Eastern start for both of those out in the association.
Dub Nation, stop everything you're doing right now, because the NBA landscape just shifted in a way that could change the next chapter of Warriors basketball forever. Anthony Davis in a Golden State Warriors uniform is no longer just a wild rumor or late-night fantasy. This is the kind of move that instantly rewrites expectations, reshapes rotations, and sends a clear message to the rest of the league. The Warriors are not done chasing championships. Not now, not with Steph Curry still breathing fire, and not with this front office willing to swing big. Let's be real, the Warriors have been fighting uphill battles all season. Injuries, inconsistency, aging stars, and a Western Conference that gets deeper and more aggressive every year. But what has never changed is the belief that if you give Steph Curry the right pieces, anything is possible. Anthony Davis is not just a piece. He is a pillar, a franchise-altering two-way superstar who immediately fixes multiple problems at once. Defensively, this move is massive. For years, Golden State has relied on system defense, communication, and Draymond Green's brilliance to survive against bigger, more physical teams. Anthony Davis changes that equation entirely. He is elite rim protection. He is switchable. He erases mistakes. He allows perimeter defenders to play aggressively, knowing there's a wall waiting behind them. Suddenly, those paint points that have haunted the Warriors disappear. Suddenly, the Warriors look big without losing speed. Offensively, the fit is even more terrifying for the league. Imagine the spacing. Steph Curry bending defenses at half court, Klay Thompson forcing defenders to stay glued, and now Anthony Davis rolling hard to the rim, popping to the mid-range, finishing lobs, punishing mismatches, and commanding double teams in the post. You cannot guard all of that. You pick your poison, and every option hurts. This is also about timing. Steph Curry is still elite, but everyone knows the clock matters. The Warriors did not bring in Anthony Davis to build for 5 years from now. They did it to maximize right now. This is a win-now move, and it screams urgency. It tells the locker room, the fan base, and the league that Golden State is all in while its generational superstar is still playing at an MVP level. There's been a lot of talk about sacrifice, about what it costs to land a player like Anthony Davis. And yes, it costs. Draft picks, young talent, maybe even emotional cornerstones. But championship windows do not wait for comfort. They demand boldness. And the Warriors have always been at their best when they trust their culture, trust their stars, and trust their system to elevate elite talent. Anthony Davis entering that ecosystem is not a gamble, it's an investment. And let's talk about motivation. Anthony Davis has heard the noise, the injury narratives, the questions about durability, the doubts about leadership. What better place to silence all of that than Golden State, where roles are clear, pressure is shared, and winning is the standard? He doesn't have to be everything. He just has to be Anthony Davis, defensive anchor, offensive force, difference maker when it matters most. This move also changes how teams game plan the Warriors. No more switching everything without consequence. No more small ball lineups daring Golden State to beat size. Those days are gone. With Anthony Davis on the floor, the Warriors can play big, small, fast, slow, defensive, or explosive. That versatility is what wins playoff series. Make no mistake, the Western Conference just took notice. The Lakers, Nuggets, Suns, and Timberwolves all have to recalibrate because the Warriors are no longer just dangerous, they are complete. And when you combine championship DNA, elite shooting, and one of the best two-way big men of this generation, you get a team nobody wants to see in a 7-game series. Dub Nation, this is the moment. This is the move that reignites belief, the move that tells us the Warriors are not fading quietly into history. They are rewriting the ending. Anthony Davis to Golden State is more than a transaction. It's a statement. And if this group stays healthy, locked in, and connected, the rest of the NBA better be ready. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe this move makes the Warriors true title contenders again? How far can this team go with Anthony Davis alongside Steph Curry? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button if you're riding with Dub Nation, and make sure you're subscribed to Warriors Nation News, because this season just got very, very real.